بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم لله تبارك وتعالى. Inshallah, let's start with Al-Fatiha to the soul of the author, الشيخ الدكتور محمد سعيد رمضان البوتي. الفاتحة. What page are we on?
Roman number 2. I'm sorry, page 11. I misread.
Okay. Bismillah.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. The author, may Allah Ta'ala have mercy on him, said, how then does bigotry manifest itself?
So this is the word at-ta'assub, right? At-ta'assub. What that means is to consider or be extreme in one's own school of thought. In other words, when one would consider one's own school of thought better than the other valid schools. This is called at-ta'assub.
It is when someone sees the evidence, understands it according to the scholarly criteria established for it, in which he attained expertise, yet he abandons that evidence for the sake of the school he ascribes to. Is the gate of ijtihad
So,
open?
and this is what is claimed by many people when they say that, you'll find a hadith and that hadith is correct, and then you find it going against your school, and you abandon the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ for a school of thought, which in reality, no one does as a learned person, because they understand the methodology of how to deal with different narrations and apparent contradictions. But for common people, this could happen.
It is wide open, as it has always been, and no one has the authority to close it. It had and still has its conditions and restrictions, and none can tamper with them.
So even we don't say no one is capable of ijtihad, but Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah has never accepted one's absolute claim to ijtihad in all of the rules of the sacred law since the four Imams. And there has been others, but they've always followed within the methodology of the four Imams. As for ijtihad, personal legal rulings in new cases, that is something that will happen to the day of judgment. But as the author mentioned, it has its conditions and its restrictions. So not everybody can do it. And I think this is if you can keep this point the whole time we talk about this subject, which is going to be quite lengthy, as the author is going to take many different views of this subject. But if you keep as a foundation the mujtahid and the muqallid, the scholar and the common person, right? If you keep this and that they have different ranks, and you keep basically two verses in your mind. You keep the verse, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلِ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people of knowledge if you do not know. That's one point. We're on page number 12. That's one point. And the verse, قُلْ هَلْ يَسْتَوِي الَّذِينَ يَعْلَمُونَ وَالَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Say, are those who know equal to those who do not know? If you keep those two things in mind, this subject will be easy for you to follow. The whole subject is going to relate to qualified and those who lack qualifications. In my most political correct way to say that. The qualified and those who lack qualifications. The learned and expert to the unlearned novice. The mujtahid and the muqallid. And if you keep these categories, and in between them are levels. Not all common people are the same, and not all mujtahids are the same. But there is a criteria by which the common person goes to a scholar, which the muqallid can become a mujtahid, right? There is a qualifications for that. And then at the level of the expertise, the expert, there are restrictions that keep those who are not qualified from entering their realm. Is this clear? Oh, let me mention this, right? Please, everyone listen, because I thought about this yesterday. I want to be fair with you. I think some things you already know, but let me clarify it so we don't keep doing the same thing over and over unnecessarily. I totally disagree with the general methodology of Al-Wahhabiyyah. I don't, no matter who else does, I don't count them as Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, right? Is that part clear for me? Does everyone, when they listen to me, they know what they're hearing, right? Are we all together on this point? I'm talking about understanding you're the one who's giving this class, giving these lessons. Because if you don't understand that, you may misunderstand, right? I don't agree with their general methodology. And then there are more specific points where the agreement is more intense. And I don't count them as Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, right? Right. So, with that being said, right, if you do, you can't force that on me, right? If you count them as Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, don't push that on me because you're going to send the wrong message. Say, this is my position. Okay, that's your position. And we have a right, and we must learn to how to disagree. You're not going to force your position on me, and I'm not going to force my position on you. You can express your position, and I'll express my position, right? And that's it. And then we learn to live with that. But I want my position to remain my position. Don't transfer your position and make it mine, because it's not, right? So that's just one point. I'm saying that for a reason. So because you have this position, right, I would like you to speak in general. So because you have an inclination to Wahhabis, right, don't expose that to me and then make me respond to your individual Wahhabi, right? Don't do that, because it's not about the individual Wahhabi person that you like or that you admire or that you think is learned. You follow me? Let's keep it general to what we're talking about, the rule. Don't make it personal to individuals. Can we agree on that? Right? Because if you pushing your agenda, I'm going to respond, right? Because I'm not going to let you push it. But do me a favor. We already know where we're at, so let's not do that. Can we agree? So don't tell me about an individual. Unless he's a real important scholar who is an authority that we're discussing that issue. But if we're talking about common people, there's no need to mention people's names. And all of us in that criteria are all common people. And even though we may be levels among common people, we're all common people. We are not scholars. So we don't need to talk about each other. We can address those whom we all take the knowledge from, and that is sufficient to cover our points. Do you understand my point? This is very important to understand, and I'm begging you to try to maintain this level of manners and behaviors for myself and for you, right? Are we clear what I'm saying? Any confusion? For the people in the back, just any confusion? Don't do that. So if we want to, I'll give you an example. If you want to address some issue that the Al-Wahhabiyya have, you have Ibn Taymiyyah, you have Ibn Uthaymeen, you have Bin Baz, you have Al-Albani, you have all of these people who are the authorities in that field, who are the scholars agreed upon among them. You could quote them. You could talk about what they said. You don't got to talk about the guy down the street who's only relating from them. Why are you mentioning him? The case is he related it from so-and-so. Then if we got to mention someone, mention the one who related from. Don't need to put him in and make it personal. You understand my point? And that way, you'll also learn how to research and go to original sources. And you keep down hostilities between people, right? Tayyip, go ahead. I just wanted to mention that because it happened yesterday. And after I responded, even though I tried to be as politically correct as possible, I felt very bad afterwards. Because some of us, we just like drama, right? We look for drama. And I don't like that stuff, right? And nor do I like hurting my people, especially my people. I don't like that. I don't like hurting people, period. But especially my people that divide and conquer, let's make it personal with each other and we all in the same boat. I'm not with it. That doesn't mean I'm not going to address issues, but deal with the issues, not people. Okay, go ahead. I just wanted to get that out there.
Is this the time for stirring up arguments over minor religious matters like this one? When a minor religious issue becomes a sharp weapon in the hands of those who try to attack the basic principles upon which the religion is founded, it would be naive to consider this a minor issue. When saying that Hanafi fiqh jurisprudence is something alien to the sacred law is considered a minor issue, when there is a deliberate and planned effort to shake the confidence people have in the imams of jurisprudence, calling them ignorant and describing their books as rusty, and yet we consider the matter to be a minor issue. Well then, according to that, all of our religion has become a minor issue.
So here, if we see, that's true, Imam Fahim. I do love you, but I'm not going to let you spread misguidance. But I still love you, so that's why I had to tear you apart. But it pains me. You know, when you used to get beatings, your mother would say, or your dad would say, this is going to hurt me more than it's going to hurt you. All of us remember those whoopings. It's going to hurt me more than it's going to hurt you. Naam, go ahead.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Introduction to the first edition. I wish that someone sincere would save me from writing about this topic. For so long, I have desired that I not be distracted by things that prevent me from focusing on the bigger issues pertaining to Muslims today. Issues such as the various ills they have been afflicted with, shattering their unity, subjecting them to humiliation, and threatening their very survival unless they hurry and seek treatment immediately. Indeed, I have tried not to get distracted or let my pen be distracted from this serious condition by other smaller, less urgent, more trivial, and rather obvious matters.
And I want uh, us to think about something. We as Muslims in general have an avowed enemy that is plotting to destroy us, Shaitan and his soldiers. So within our own ranks, we have to find a way to cooperate and survive as an ummah, despite our differences. We have to figure that, right? Now, with that in mind, with that in mind, we still have to establish the truth. But while we establish the truth, at the same time, we got to think at the big picture as well and act appropriately. Now,
But what can you do when someone drags these trivial and obvious matters to the forefront, turning them into controversial issues and forcing them upon you as impediments to your dealing with those bigger, more urgent issues? It is as though you are trying to rush a bleeding person to the nearest hospital, but on the way you are stopped by those who wish to take away this injured person to give him a bath or perform plastic surgery on him, instead of helping his wounds heal. Can you save this person's life by any other means other than wanting him not to follow the advice of this crazy person before rushing him to the nearest doctor?
and here's the catch with that this analogy that Sheikh Al-Bouti is giving is uh, that you know you have real issues that we have to deal with, like issues of aqidah, like those issues that relate when you make a mistake in them could go to disbelief. So we can't avoid. I'm on page 13. What page are you on?
12.
All right, page 12. I got a different book. Uh, so we're on page 12. So some things we have to address, right? And while we address those issues, because those issues will distract us from the real issues, the issues that we have in common, those disagreements, if we don't address them, they're going to affect the unity of us when we got to deal with common issues. If that makes any sense to you. I don't know why it sounded like it didn't come out right. In other words, we can't have fake unity. So if there's real pertinent issues that divide us, we have to address those issues so that when we have common issues that we all are affected by, we would be able to really work together because we already got an understanding. Right? So with these issues, because of the onslaught of these ideologies from those people who contradict the four schools, you have to address it because that becomes something that's going to ultimately stop us from working together on bigger issues that may be more pertinent to us as a whole. Now,
Today's Muslims suffer from many ailments such as atheistic thought, immoral conduct, and
which is
distraction.
abundant on the college campuses for parents who may not wear on the university campuses. Oh man, atheism is running wild. So this is an issue that we have to confront. People not forget following a school, they don't even believe in God at all.
Immoral conduct and distraction from Islamic principles. Muslim scholars and thinkers, and whoever is concerned about Islam, need to focus on these issues. But what do they do when other less important matters stand in the way? These are issues not worthy of wasting time over, thereby creating more problems than solutions. How would you deal with such issues if you turn around only to find that between you and those whom you are trying to guide back to the path of Iman, faith, and its spiritual wayfaring stand other issues which lead them into endless confusion. Issues such as the claim that following taqlid, the four imams, is disbelief, kufr, and following a particular school of law, madhab, is heresy, dalal, and tantamount to taking the imam of that school as a lord besides Allah subhanahu wa
And
ta'ala.
those early, it's not so bad now, but the early Wahhabiyya and those who follow that Al-Laa Madhhabiyyah approach went to that extent to say to follow a madhhab is shirk. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. So really you're saying kufr. And then at best, severe misguidance. So what that type of rhetoric does is render the whole ummah as misguided, which is very dangerous, extremely dangerous, to say all of the Muslims were misguided. And if you make them kuffar on the base of it, it leads to bloodshed. So it's very dangerous.
Today's Muslim, in light of such claims, starts looking back at the history of Muslims and their notables and ranks, only to find that it was replete with apostates, heretics, and deviants.
And that's think about it. This point that Sheikh Al-Bouti is making is really, really, really deep. If you take that position and you look back at all the scholars, right, you will see that all of the major scholars in the nation follow the madhab. It's like, whew, what kind of claim is that? And if you look, even all of the scholars, the major scholars of this nation, the vast majority, 95% of them followed madhabs, were Ashari or Maturidi and Sufis. And then to claim that misguidance or even shirk or kufr is extremely dangerous, such an idea, right? There is no book among the major books that you would study in Islam. I'm not talking about all these modern pamphlets that are written. Real books, real scholarly reference books in Islam, authoritative books, except that the author followed the madhab, was Ash'ari or Maturidi, and was a Sufi. There is no chain of narration on the face of the earth except that the majority of the narrators in that chain of narration followed one of the four schools, was Ash'ari or Maturidi, or was a Sufi. So such a claim is extremely harmful to the unity of the Muslim nation, right? And what's worse is the idea is passed off as it creates unity when it is the biggest source of division that the Ummah has ever known. It comes in the disguise of unifying the Muslims supposedly on the Quran and Sunnah. And such a claim actually rips asunder the unity of the Muslim nation. Do y'all understand that? Now, go ahead.
He who has taken Islam from them and was influenced by his affinity to them is now taking the risk of trying to free himself from following the four imams. He now tries to understand the sacred law from its primary sources, the Quran and the Sunnah, only to find out that he, among others who are doing the same thing, is fishing in troubled water, swimming in deep water, and sinking in ignorance.
And
How
here's the point, because after you knock out the imams and then you knock out all the scholars, you're left to your own whims and desires. And then when we put the scale of qualifications, right, we realize that We don't fit we don't have the qualifications, nor do we fit the description of such a title to follow Quran and Sunnah. We don't fit the description, right? Really, when you look at that statement of Sheikh Shuaib Arnaout, you see that when he said any of those scholars could put 15 of today's scholars in his pocket, do you realize how significant that? He's talking about scholars. He's not talking about us. Listen, I meant to say this yesterday, and I get afterthoughts, scattered thoughts within this. When we say scholar, write this, please. When you say scholar, you should have a definition of what a scholar is. When you say scholar, you should have a definition for what a scholar is. Put that up, please. When you say scholar, you should have a definition for what a scholar is. Because I want us all to be on the same page. Right? Could everyone copy that? It's extremely important. When you say scholar, you should have a definition of what a scholar is. Right? This is important. And this is not about ego or not about wishful thinking. Right? So when I'm talking about a scholar, I'm talking about, when I say scholar, I'm talking about one who has reached one of those levels of ijtihad within a school, even the lowest level, right? That's what I'm talking about when I say scholar. That's what I'm referring to. I'm referring to one of those levels, and we talked about those levels. Within any school, he's reached one of the, even the lowest level, right? Which is, like, as we mentioned in that Shafi'i school, al-tarjih, right? He's weighing different opinions, right? At least that level, right? So when I say that such and such is not a scholar, I'm talking about that. I didn't say he doesn't know anything. Please understand that. I have a definition of a scholar when I talk about a scholar, what I'm looking at. That doesn't mean he's not knowledgeable. That doesn't mean he's not an advanced layman, right? He can be a layman and be an advanced layman, very advanced, almost close to a scholar, but he's not a scholar. Is this clear? I'm talking about when I say that, because what do you mean there's no scholars? I got a definition, and that person doesn't fit the definition. It doesn't mean that he doesn't know anything. Is this clear? Is everybody following this? Any question on this point? Because I have to make sure we're following each other. It's extremely important. Because I notice we get emotional breakdowns sometimes, and we get offended by something you shouldn't be offended about, right? Because you didn't understand. So when I say this is not a scholar, because you like him, you got offended. And you didn't take into consideration the definition of a scholar when I said it, right? And if you took that in consideration, you wouldn't be offended. You would say, right, he's learned, but not a scholar like you talking about. Do you understand my point? So and we talked about, let's So when we talked about the levels of scholars within a school, right? طبقات العلماء في المذهب, right? Uh, that's what I'm talking about. We already talked about it. You should have go back to the Reliance of the Traveler. Let me get it for you. Do you know where it was when we were talking about the level of the scholars? What section was that, reader? And if I don't got to get up and go get my book.
1 second.
Let's read it quick. We talked about we had Imam al-Shafi'i, then we mentioned Imam al-Muzani, then we mentioned Imam al-Ghazali, then we mentioned Imam al-Juwayni, then we mentioned al-Nawawi and al-Rafi'i. And then we talked about the latter scholars, Ibn Hajar al-Haytami, Ibn al-Ramli, and al-Khatib al-Shirbini. You remember that discussion? Why scholars differ.
Why scholars differ?
It's in the appendix, in the notes. The section W. Let me look. I'll find it.
Section W.
W12.
Levels of scholars?
Yes.
The reason for various positions within one school?
Yes. So W12, just read it real quick, fast, inshallah, please. Just the 4 levels.
12W12.1. Soli Muadhin. To clarify the reason for scholarly disagreement within one legal school, we may say that scholars divide each school into various levels, the most important of which, according to the narrator after the Imam, may be characterized as follows. Number 1, the first level, composed of those qualified to do ijtihad, independent legal reasoning within the school, deploying it according to the general methodological principles established by their imams, and who transmit the words of the imam, such scholars being colleagues, including men like Muzani. Number 2, the second level, composed of those qualified to do ijtihad on particular legal questions that were not discussed by the imam of the school, excluding such scholars as Imam Ghazali. Number 3, the third level, composed of those qualified to do textual exegesis, and who, because of their comprehensive mastery of the works of the school, specialize in interpreting the positions of their imams that require details and explanations to be properly understood, and in specifying the precise meaning of rulings which might otherwise be understood equivocally, including such scholars as the imam of the 2 sanctuaries, Juwayni. Number 4, the fourth level, which is composed of those qualified to weigh various scholarly positions and judge which is the soundest, evaluating their imam's positions in terms of the reliability of the narrators of the channels of transmission of the opinion from the imam, or in terms of the understanding shown in treating particular legal questions, and who may then say which is the stronger or more suitable position. This level including such men as the 2 sheikhs, Rafi'i and Nawawi.
Keep going.
It is apparent from the foregoing that scholarly differences may occur at each of the levels, in the deductions of the colleagues and their ijtihad within the general methodological principles of the school, in judging one position of the imam of the school to be sounder than another of his positions, or in judging one's position's channel of transmission to be sounder than another's, all of which take place according to the evidence available to the particular scholar and his understanding of the imam's words.
Keep going. We'll just read the whole section real quick.
It is obligatory to judge according to the strongest position in a school. Zainuddin Malabadi, Al-Iraqi and Ibn Salah have recorded scholarly consensus as defined.
Stop. I want to pause real quick. Just brief. Al-Iraqi and Ibn Salah, does anyone know who they are and their rank? And in which field? Who they are, and I don't mean give a detail. Do you know who they are? What is their rank and in which field? So we talk about levels of scholarship, right? Who are these two people, Al-Iraqi and Ibn Salah? What is their rank and in which field? Does anyone know? I'm saying this for a reason. Right? Okay. Right. So you have, they're both hafiz of hadith at the high rank. So both of them memorize, and if you want to give an idea of that, to get a definition, around 100,000 hadith with their chains of narration. So they reach the level of hafiz in hadith. And they are the foremost authorities in the science of hadith. Al-Iraqi, he has a famous hadith poem called Al-Alfiyah, Alfiyatul Iraqi. Ibn Salah has his book, Muqaddimah, fi ilm al-hadith, right? Muqaddimah to Ibn Salah, which is the foremost book in the science of hadith, which is like the foundational text by which every other book was built upon. So Iraqi's books are built upon, his works are built upon the work of Ibn Salah. Imam al-Nawawi's books are built upon the works of Ibn Salah, right? So these are not just anybody. These are the authorities in the field. So if you want to weigh them up, it's like them. And if you want to take like Al-Albani, for instance, or Muqbil, Al-Albani, no doubt, is knowledgeable in hadith. Muqbil is knowledgeable in hadith, no doubt. But compared to Al-Iraqi and Ibn Salah, they don't enter the discussion. Do you understand the difference? I'm giving you this analogy that I was mentioned, I'm making an example for. So if we're talking about hadith, you can't say Al-Iraqi said and Al-Albani said, or Ibn Salah said and Muqbil said. It's not equivalent. It's not even permissible to do some stupid stuff like that. That's how far the qualifications are different. Do you understand my point? Even though we agree that they are knowledgeable, we don't disagree with that. But when we're talking about experts, it's a whole entirely different discussion. Is this point clear? So you don't compare us to Al-Albani. That's not a comparison. We're not in the field. And even as laymen, we don't reach his level, right? Nor do you compare him with the experts, because to them, he's not in the field at all. It's not even a discussion. If he was sitting in their sessions, he would be pouring the tea and fixing the shoes. He's not at that level. These were people who, when they talked, they didn't need books. They would relate all the hadiths from their mind with the chains of narration. That's how they talked, like that. They don't relate hadith without. Do you understand my point? A person like Al-Albani cannot survive without his library. He cannot survive. And even with his library, he's going to make mistakes. There's a big difference. That doesn't put him down in terms of his effort. It just doesn't put him above his rank. Is this point clear? That's what I'm talking about. So when we're talking about experts, we're mentioning the real authorities. But if you give a person more than their rank, you're going to confuse the issue, right? You're going to confuse the issue. So the expert and the novice will become equal. And sometimes the novice will overthrow the expert. Like you have a hadith related by Bukhari and Muslim, and then someone say it is authentic by Al-Albani. That's hilarious. You heard what I said? That's how bad it can get. You have a hadith that is in Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, and then someone come later and say this hadith related by Bukhari and Muslim, authenticated by Al-Albani. I'm just showing you how worse it can get, how bad it can get. You took an amateur and he's the stamp of approval for the highest experts in the field. Do you follow my point? Okay, go ahead.
Al-Iraqi and Ibn Salah have recorded scholarly consensus as defined at B7 that it is not permissible to judge by other than the strongest.
So who is he relating? From Al-Iraqi, Zainuddin Al-Iraqi, and Ibn Salah, they relate al-ijma', scholarly consensus. Now to them, what is ijma'? It's the ijma' of the mujtahid scholars, not just anybody, because these are the experts. Now the experts are narrating a case of consensus. I want to show you how bad this can get. These are the experts in the field of hadith, the top scholars of hadith, by which no one talks about hadith except that they refer to their works. That should show you their level. No one has a discussion about the field of hadith with a chain of narration except that they go through their works. That's how much of authority they are. If you're talking about hadith properly with a chain of narration, any of those books, and you talking about the science of hadith, you must, if you're serious, refer to the works and through the route of Al-Iraqi and Ibn Salah. It is, if you're a serious student or scholar in hadith and its related sciences, you can't have a true discussion without mentioning them or referring to their works. It's not a discussion. From that, do you understand the rank of the people I'm talking about? Just these two I'm talking about. Right? Are y'all following me? Okay. So they said there's scholarly consensus. After such a discussion, telling me what Bin Baz said, what Al-Albani, Ibn Uthaymeen, Fawzan, it's not even a discussion. They don't even fit in the discussion, period. But we're so deluded that we actually think they weigh in on the discussion. You're not even in the field. How are you going to weigh in on the discussion? Except by referring to what the expert said. You're not an expert. So what did the expert say? But what's worse is when they try to replace the experts with novice. That's horrible. And that's what has happened today. To the point, the people don't even know the experts. They don't know the experts at all, right? They only know the novice. They don't know the journeyman. They don't know they don't know the specialist. They only know the primary physician. That's it. They don't even know who the specialist. They don't even know specialists exist. Do you see my point? They only know the primary physician. And it's so bad, they only know urgent care. They don't even know a private doctor who's been working for 30 years. No, urgent care, where for everything you go wrong with you, you get antibiotics. No matter what you got, give them some antibiotics. That's what we've turned our Islamic religion into. And don't you say that? Did you go to the doctors? Yeah, I went to urgent care. No, did you go to the doctors? No, I went to urgent care. No, that's not the doctors. Allahu Akbar. You need to go see a doctor. Oh my goodness. Do you get the analogy? Okay, go ahead. I think y'all got my point very clear now, right? Go ahead.
Have recorded scholarly consensus, as defined at B7, that it is not permissible to judge by other than the strongest legal position in a school, as Subki has explicitly stated at length in several places in his
Who
fatwa.
is this as Subki? Who is this Subki? You should know. Who is as Subki? Come on. Who is that Subki? Who is this Subki being talked about here? Who is this Subki? Without a question mark. So we got a conflict between the people of Philadelphia. One says Taqiyuddin with a question mark, and the other one says Tajuddin, and then another one says Tajuddin, then another one says Taqiyuddin. Which one is it? So it's Taqiyuddin as-Subki, the father, not the son, the father, who died in 756, as Isa mentioned. So we're talking about Taqiyuddin as-Subki. And he, as the scholar said, he reached the level of Mujtahid Mutlaq, an absolute Mujtahid. And he was the chief judge in both Syria and Egypt. And he was the one who wrote against Ibn Taymiyyah, many books. So you notice, we look at the scholars that are quoted, Al-Iraqi in Hadith, and Ibn Salah, As-Suyuti, As-Subki in Al-Fiqh, in Hadith, in the Islamic sciences. And I want to point something. All of them were Sufis. And all of them were Ash'ari. Just to add to it. Al-Iraqi, Ibn Salah, and As-Subki, all was scholarly at the top level. All of them were Sufis, and all of them were Ash'ari. I just want you to, just as an indication, these are the top scholars the nation has known. Right? Go ahead. And this is what they said.
Considering it to be judging by other than what Allah Ta'ala has revealed, since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Most High has made it obligatory for mujtahids, as defined at O22.1 letter D, to adopt the position for which the evidence is strongest, and has made it obligatory for non-mujtahids to follow the ijtihad of mujtahids in all works that are personally obligatory.
Right. So here they relate al-ijma, a consensus. Then they tell you why, right? And when he mentioned mujtahid, then he said, there's the definition. Remember I said, when you say scholar, you should have a definition for what you're talking about. So go to there and find the definition of a mujtahid. So you know what we're talking about here. We're not talking about anybody. This is very important. All right, let's read this last part and then. So they said that in all one's works that are personally obligatory, you have to follow a mujtahid, and that is following the madhab, because the madhab is the deductions, the legal deductions of the mujtahid scholar in all of one's personal works, in court rulings, in all of that. You have to follow that.
The
Now,
strongest position in the Shafi'i school. Jalal Bukalini relates from his father,
Jalaluddin al-Bulkini,
Bulqini, excuse me, relates from his father, Sirajuddin, that
Sirajuddin al-Bulkini, they said he reached the level of mujtahid mutlaq. So you had the son of Sirajuddin, Jalaluddin al-Bulkini, relating from his father. His father is said to reach the level of mujtahid, Sirajuddin al-Bulkini. Now,
that the soundest position in the Shafi'i school for court rulings and formal legal opinions, fatwa, according to the narrator, an order of which must be accepted first when available, is what Nawawi and Rafi agree upon. Then
now
Nawawi,
remember, when we looked at the levels of the school, we saw that the position of An-Nawawi and Rafi was way down to the fourth level, right? Right? So they are not considered the highest level of mujtahids, but they are within the field of scholars of the madhab. And because they weigh the rulings, right? Go ahead.
then Nawawi's position, then Rafi'i's, then what has been judged strongest by the majority of scholars, then by the most knowledgeable, then by the most God-fearing.
So
Al-Sheikh,
there are when they're talking about positions, what is mu'tamad in the school, what is the reliable position in the school, you're noticing they got definitions for all this stuff. It's not just thrown out there. Nah, here, 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 here. It's an order, it's a system. Go ahead.
Al-Sheikh, per Abdul Wakil Durubi, Ibn Hajar Haytami,
Ibn
states,
Hajar al-Haytami is from the latter Shafi'i scholars, and after Imam al-Rafi, Imam al-Nawawi, we said we have those three: Ibn Hajar al-Haytami, al-Ramli, and al-Khatib al-Shirbini, right? So he's quoting Ibn Hajar, and Ibn Hajar is the author of the book Tuhfatul Muhtaj, right? Which is of the latter Shafi'i school, a reliable book for referring to finding out the reliable position in the school. Now,
states that this is what has been agreed upon by the most exacting of the later scholars, and is the position our sheikhs have enjoined us to rely on.
right. So here, when I mention that goes back to our book, and y'all need to, I know this is a lot, right? That's why you can always review and listen to over and over and over again, right? But so our point was here that when a person start going Quran and Sunnah, he's fishing in troubled waters, swimming in deep water, and sinking in ignorance, right? Because not anyone can do that. Then when we start learning about scholars, this all has to connect. Please, 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 even though it sounds like a lot. I wish we could, I want to get to the point, believe me, where we don't got to do all this. We already admit there's experts and non-experts. We're non-experts. Let's just go. Preschool, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, all the way up to university studies. And let's accept the curriculum at each level. I would love to get there. But unfortunately, due to this Wahhabi so-called Salafi influence, we skip from kindergarten straight to graduate studies without nothing in between. And we talking graduate studies from the door. I follow Quran and Sunnah. You just learned to talk. Now you're a legal scholar. You just skipped all the grades, the whole curriculum, because the curriculum from K to 8th grade or 9th grade, and then high school, then college, then university, then graduate, there is a there's a curriculum to prepare you for when you reach that level. You just skipped all that straight out of kindergarten. You know, they say straight out of Compton, straight out of kindergarten. Like, just go for it. We don't see stuff like that, but that's exactly what it is, right? Do y'all get these analogies? I hope they're useful to you. I'm making them so you can connect it to reality of what we're talking about. And in reality, what we're talking about, the matter is more severe, way more severe, right? But so because of that, I'm talking to a person who thinks they're a scholar, even though that's not true. So I got to show the person, or we have to show that, listen, we're not scholars. Would you take it down, please? You need to read the basic book just to get the point. Before you even get to knowing about Quran and Sunnah, there are some prerequisites you need, a lot of them, right? Imam Fahim, that's bars. You are crazy. Guys, burn out Fahim, Imam Fahim. Allah. I'm sorry, that is funny. Boy, you got me there, Imam Fahim. That's some serious bars. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. I got to keep that one. I'm sorry. Okay. It's all, I know we talked about a lot. Are we all together? Are we all on the same page? Okay, let's take that last line and we'll stop.
How can ijtihad, independent reasoning, be allowed for him, and how can it produce any result when he cannot grasp the result of previous ijtihad?
Right. So the claim that's being made here is like, man, come on. Once you understand that, then it's not ego tripping. For instance, right? When you get an opportunity to be around scholars, learned people that are not even at that level, I'm talking about real learned people that are not at the level of ijtihad, but they're learned. In our time, we call them the scholars. In our time, we call them the scholars, right? In our time, those learned laymen who are learning, we call them the scholars. If you put our scholars, now let's put it in context, compared to the likes of Al-Iraqi and Ibn Salah and As-Subki and An-Nawawi and Ibn Hajar al-Haytami, then you take 15 of our scholars and one of them will put all of them in his pocket. Now, do you understand the context? Do you understand the context of what I'm talking about when I say scholar now? Is it clear? Is that clear for everyone? Everything has context. When we put things in context, it's not so controversial. When it's in context. When it's out of context, it can seem like an attack. But when it's in context, it's not an attack. It's just reality, right? It's not an attack. I'm not insulting you. It's just I won't allow you or myself to make claims we can't substantiate. They're false claims, right? You're not a scholar. Now, if you say you're a scholar relative to our time, that might be a discussion, right? And that might be true, right? You're more learned than everybody on the playground. You know, I told you I had a friend, right? I never forget this, that he was in the NBA, but he didn't play. He sat the bench. I mean, he was good, but he sat the bench in the NBA. So I was teasing him, talking junk one day, and we went on the basketball court, and this guy was shooting layups like they were three-pointers. I mean, shooting three-pointers like they were layups. I was shocked. He was, but he was sitting the bench in the NBA. I mean, he was shooting a three-pointer like it was a layup, like all net. I was shocked. And I remember his statement. He said, a bench warmer in the NBA is a superstar anywhere else. He said, a bench warmer in the NBA is a superstar anywhere else. Now, when we move that to scholarship, right, that same analogy, the one we call a scholar today won't even be a bench warmer in the realm of the early scholars. They would be the water boy. Not even a bench warmer, a water boy. You get the Gatorade for the scholars. But in our time, that person's a super scholar. There's a big difference. But when we talk about our religion, it doesn't change, right? Our religion, right, still has its rank, even if we're falling short. It still has its levels, right? And we can't redo that. This is the point of this whole book. This is the point of the whole book. So if we be honest, right, we now, once we got that point, what is our job? I'm gonna try to make this quick to close up. Once we understand that, now our job is to keep the standard and then work hard to produce succeeding generations of learned individuals that can reach up to the standard even though we're not there. Y'all got the point now? That's what we're trying to do. We're not going to tear the standard down. We're going to keep the standard there. And inshallah, with that standard in front of us, we're going to start training, or we're going to do our best, and others, succeeding generations to raise up to that standard, even though we ourselves are nowhere near it. Does it make sense? Does it make sense? And I'll give you an example from how this can happen. We're living it right now. We're living an example of the process, even though we're still very, very low, but we're an example of the process. When I became the Imam before me, Imam Khairi Shakur, rahimahullah, let's make al-Fatiha for our Imam Khairi Shakur, al-Fatiha. He said to me, He said, listen, we was in the masjid, and there used to be just one or two, three people, nobody studying, nobody. It was just la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, right? It was bad. He said to me, I vision that one day this masjid is going to be learned people, Arabic going to be studied, Arabic going to be spoken, all the Islamic science is going to be taught, and we're going to have people coming from all over. And I looked at him, I was like, he is bugging. That's what I said to myself. I'm not going to lie. Because I was looking at the present condition at that time. I'm like, these people don't even follow madhabs. They mix with Wahhabis. They don't study. None of that's going on. What are you talking about? That's what he said to me. I never forget it. And now, after years, I look at what he said has come true to an extent way beyond I would have ever imagined. He said that. And now, all around the world, all around the country, people know about Masjid Muhammad. And people know that's a place where scholars visit. They have stuff, they're learning, they're aware of it. He said that at least 16 years ago. I didn't see it at all. I swear I didn't. I didn't see it. And now I'm saying the same thing. So what would it look like another 20 years from now if we keep doing the work? Let me give you an example. So we started. Now in our community, we have another imam besides me, graduate from Al-Azhar, chains of narration in Quran and Hadith and Fiqh, connected with scholars, the greatest scholars all over the world, not just from him, not just from me. Besides my own teachers, he has his own connections, own teachers, and we are now studying books of Hadith and things with his teachers every single day. It can happen. That's the next, and he's only 25 years old, right? So I started imam and teaching in the masjid. I was almost 40 years old, 38, 39 years old. He's 25. You see how it works? Now, all we got to do is keep producing. Then they'll be 16 and 17 like that. And then if you keep working hard, you got your scholars in your own community. It can happen. It takes work and realization. I'm just pointing to you how it can happen, right? So even if we don't live to see it, because he didn't live to see it, he saw it forming, because he did live to see Sheikh Samir coming. He did live to see Sheikh Jamal coming. He lived to see some of it, but he didn't live to see summits and all that stuff. He didn't live that long. He didn't live to see his dream come true. And he witnessed it. He didn't live to see it. But it's happening and it's continuing. We have to do the same thing in all of our communities all around the country. So when we're talking about, and I'm going to stop, I said it right. When we're talking about what we have to do, I need you to have a bigger vision, right? Even though right now it looks like, man, overwhelming. Nah, we could do it step by step, generation to generation, from our children to our grandchildren to our great. We can reverse the trend, but we have to work now. That's my only point. And all of what we're doing every day, we're making a habit. So when I die, Enough of you should have learned, should have read enough books, should have reviewed, should have studied, and you just pick up where I left off and keep it going. You follow my point? It can happen, but we got to be serious. Some of us really got to study. Some of us got to be dedicated to the mission. Not everybody can be on the bench. Some people got to get in the game. But it's doable. We're doing it. You're watching it. Now just imagine the next generation, all this is done in Arabic, along with people doing English, Arabic, English. Different books are being studied. All the sources are being studied. Now we get to the point where the books of Al-Iraqi are studied. The books of Ibn Salah are studied. The books of As-Subki are studied. You see my point? In our communities. Not we just talking about names, we're actually studying their books. I know this is radical thinking, but I believe in it and I've witnessed it. And we could do it. And then when you get this, you won't be intimidated by Wahhabis and Salafis. Not even at all, because you would consider it like a door fighting a giant. You wouldn't even be like now when people are intimidated by them. When you learn that stuff is a joke. Someone comes to you, man, that's bid'ah. You don't even know what bid'ah is. Would you be quiet? Go sit down. Right? But now somebody say bid'ah, we get intimidated. But when you learn, you don't even know what bid'ah is. Would you go sit down, please? Thank you. Right? So, as I told Sheikh Abdul Aziz last night, if everyone does their part, it makes it easy on everyone. If everyone does their part, it makes it easy on everyone. But if everyone doesn't do their part, it makes it hard on others. So let us all do our part. If it's studying, if it's sharing, if it's conveying, if it's donating and supporting so that this work actually comes to a state of reality, everybody got a role to play. And let us all do our part. Everybody's role's not the same. Everybody's not a mujtahid. Everybody's not at one of those levels. And everybody's not the lowest of the laymen and muqallidun. Everyone got a rank. Please do your part. Wherever it is, find your part and work diligently at that level, wherever you at. And when all that comes together, we as a community will move forward. It's work. It's challenging, but it's doable. Right? It's doable. And for me, it's a must. That's how I see it. It's a must. If we don't do it, we have done an injustice to future generations of our people and the ummah. We must do it. All right, barakallahu fikum. May Allah reward you. Tonight, we'll continue with at what time? 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock tonight, discussing our deen. We're going to go at 7. I'll change the time. 7. That's 8. Inshallah. So tonight, we'll go at 7, not 8, so it doesn't be so late. Sheikh Walid will not make it. He has some of another important matter he has to attend to. So I'll do it, but I'll do it earlier so we can, inshallah. Maybe Imam Naeem will come with me. Who knows? Let's find out. Imam Naeem, are you available tonight at 7? Imam Fahim, are you available tonight at 7? We can do some discussing our deen if y'all would like to join. If not, I'll do it myself. But if y'all are available, let me know. Okay, so tonight at 7, inshallah. Barakallahu bikum wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajmain. Okay, so Imam Fahim and Imam Naeem, Tonight at 7, we'll join discussing our deen, and it should be an enlightening discussion. And actually, you know, it'll be open discussion about important matters of the deen. Yes, it's going to be a long show. Oh, and Mariam Rose is going to join too. All right, barakallahu fikum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.